Hi, everybody. I'm Tony Hawk. Thank you for inviting me to your event. I'm honored to be here. I'm used to doing speaking engagements, but more about my unlikely career as a professional skateboarder. And I don't give my mom too much credit in that speech, so this will be a learning experience that I should, and I'm thankful to be able to talk about her here. My mom was 43 when I was born, and I was the very last of 4 children. I was much younger than the other children, my siblings. Let's just say I was a surprise. and not something my mom was really expecting, obviously. And I was a very challenging child. I can say that now without any reservations. I was very much determined to do what I wanted to do. Many other parents saw that I was difficult and problematic and would say things to my mom. And my mom was amazing. She would just say, well, he's very determined. And that carried through the rest of my life. She was always very supportive of what I was doing. When I discovered skateboarding, it was the furthest thing from cool that you could do. In the early 80s, it was like there were, in the hierarchy of cool at school, it was jocks, nerds, skaters fell somewhere way below the foundation. And there was no future in it. I mean, really, there was none of the top pros, no one was rich or famous from skateboarding. No one was making a living at it. My friends were not doing it, and she was super supportive because she saw that it gave me a sense of self-confidence that other sports hadn't at that time. And I fell in love with skateboarding. I fell in love with the culture of it. It was super different. There were all these punkers and people from all walks of life, and it was this band of misfits, and my mom welcomed them all. She truly, ours was the house where everyone came to stay, and they all found her to be their surrogate mom. And it was really amazing to see that because none of my other friends' parents wanted them skating. Truly, they were all discouraged from doing it. Some had to hide the fact that they skated at all, and my mom was open arms. It was really cool. Even now, when my mom has Alzheimer's dementia, but the crew of skaters that grew up with us, their fond memories of her, I mean, they come up to me all the time, and some of them I don't even remember them staying at our house. That's how abundant it was, and how regular it was. But through those years, she worked as an educator. She worked at the high school that my siblings went to. Eventually, she started teaching at community college in business education and business management. And when I started skating and things were sort of, well, I had a modicum of success through the 80s where suddenly skating was sort of back in the mix. And I was 16. Actually, I bought a house when I was 17. Try staying in high school when you own your own house. Because when it's like your friends oh, my parents aren't home. My parents were never home. And even through those years, my mom was super supportive. But around that time, when she saw that I was gaining my independence, she actually went and got her doctorate in business education. She went off to college and became literally a doctor at age 60, which was amazing to me. I mean, I never gave it that much credence because I was off doing my own thing. I thought I was on top of the world. Woo, I was getting paid to skateboard. And she came back. And she was really proud of it, obviously, and as were we. And I remember in those days, especially when I was younger, she would do this thing where she was so used to typing and dictating what people were saying that when we would sit and watch TV, and if I saw her hands at all or if they were on me, she would be typing. And I would just feel these little, pecks on her fingers. And I remember as a kid, it was annoying as hell. But I would say, what are you typing? What are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm just typing exactly what the guy's saying on TV. And so she would just be dictating all the time, right? And as annoying as I thought it was, back then, I have fond memories of it because it's like this thing I identify with her, and that she was so unique, and that she was so, well, she was just a damn good typer, really. She taught me how to type. About 10 years ago, we started to notice that she was forgetting some things and even going into this sort of delusional state of facts or things around us. And it got more increasingly alarming, where we thought, well, there's something wrong here. We took her, obviously, to the doctor. We found that she was diagnosed with dementia caused by Alzheimer's. And I'll never forget the doctor saying, you're seeing these things, but these things are going to ramp up exponentially very quickly. And I think we were just in denial that it was going to happen so suddenly. But we started seeing different signs. Obviously, she lost her ability to drive around that time, and that was very frustrating to her. My father passed away in 1995 from cancer, but she had a boyfriend. I can't believe I'm telling this story. She had a boyfriend that insisted on driving, so that was a good thing, I guess. But he was a danger to himself and to everyone around him. I took exactly 2 rides with him. One where we drove over the median with my kid in the car seat, and another time where we went the wrong way down a one-way street. So we banished him from driving her around, and eventually it was pretty obvious she was losing her faculties, and we had to put her in a facility. But we put her in a facility that had a lot of freedom. She could go out and whatnot. And then she started to wander in this facility. And so it was sort of like there were all these different stages where they would have to tell us. And because my siblings and I were in such denial, we're just like, no, it's fine. Like, no, you don't understand. She's wandering, and she thinks she owns the place. That's when it got really weird. And then I would, every once in a while, take her out to lunch. I'll never forget this one time. I took her out to lunch with a friend of mine, and she started telling me the story about how she was going to get married to a boy who worked in the kitchen at her facility. And there were a lot of high school kids that worked at this facility. That was like their work experience. And I thought, okay, maybe she recognized one of them. I didn't think anything really strange was truly happening. And so I said, well, what's his name? And she said, I don't know, but we're going to get married because people don't get married anymore. And my friend, just trying to chime in and be nice, he said, well, I've heard of stranger things. And I said, have you? Have you heard of something stranger than your mom marrying a dude that works in the kitchen at her facility that she doesn't know the name of? And he and I started laughing, and that really was our way to cope with this disease, where it was like our escape was to find humor in the things she was saying, because they were absurd and they were disturbing. Obviously, to the core, we were really frightened, but at some point we just had to laugh it off. And not long after that, she started losing her ability to speak, and that's when it got really hard, because obviously we didn't know what she wanted, and we started to see sort of this failing recognition of her, as where every time that we would come, a lot of the times, my older sister would visit more often. She lives in the area, and she always would see Lenore and light up. She knew it was Lenore. And then when I would come, she would usually recognize me, but if I ever mentioned my daughter, one of her only granddaughters, Katie, her face would light up and she'd start dancing. That was always my cue. And I was like, oh, Mom, you remember Katie? Katie's 3 now. And so that was a fun piece of it for me. But eventually, those moments were few and far between, and we really held on to them. I mean, it was, I've heard from a lot of people here. A lot of you have been going through similar situations or have been through the worst of it, and I feel like there is this at least comfort in a shared experience, because you're all dealing with it alone. I mean, I'm lucky that I have the means to provide care for her. I don't know if my brother or my sisters or I could truly have cared for her 24/7. And nowadays, it's much harder where when I go visit, I haven't seen her recognize me in my last 2 visits. And that is getting very hard. But the last time I went to see her, excuse me if this gets a little crude, but the last time I went to see her, she was holding my hand, and I suddenly felt that tapping that she was doing, where she used to do it, like she was typing, and all I could think of was like, is that her? Is that her like reaching out to me? How do I put a keyboard in front of her? Like, how can I translate this? And I know it was probably just, something twitching or whatnot, but all I can imagine was her typing Alzheimer's. And and so that's my favorite memory of her these days. Is her saying that, and to be honest, we're lucky that she's still around. We love visiting her. We love seeing her light up every once in a while. But I understand how heavy this is and how confusing it can be, and how much work has to be done. So thanks to everyone here for donating your time, for donating your stories. And I do feel like there is hope on the horizon. I went to Seth Rogen's Hilarity for Charity event a couple months ago in LA. And there's so much work being done in terms of being proactive, of recognizing the symptoms or recognizing the risk of having it and getting it. And there are ways that you can kind of turn that tide, I believe. And I believe that we're learning a lot more. And through this group, through awareness, through storytelling, we're going to get there. So thanks, everybody, and thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it. And Alzheimer's.